The desert town was gasping in the last light of day. Dust swirled low, carried by the wind, rattling broken shutters and whispering through the crooked timbers of abandoned shacks. A horse's hooves struck slow against the hard-packed earth of Main Street, each step echoing like a drum beat in the quiet. On his saddle sat Elias McGraw, a man who had seen too much war to mistake peace for safety. His coat was frayed, his eyes heavy with years of silence, and his revolver hung at his hip like a memory he wished he could lay down. If you're new here, a voice breaks through the dust, steady and deliberate. Subscribe to the channel and tap the bell icon. Stories like this deserve to be remembered. The camera of the mind draws closer. Elias pulls the brim of his hat low, guiding his horse toward the trading post. Inside, voices rumbled. Soldiers talking of Apache raids, outlaws plotting, settlers murmuring of cattle stolen in the night. Yet Elias carried no rumor on his lips, only guilt on his shoulders. The war between blue coats and red earth still clawed at him, even though the bugles had long gone silent. He dismounted, boots striking wood, spurs jingling softly. When he pushed open the door of the post, the scent of whiskey, tobacco, and dust-worn leather greeted him. The air was thick, and so was the tension, and then he saw her, Tallulah Greywolf. She stood near the bar, taller than most men, shoulders broad beneath a simple buckskin coat, her long black hair braided and tied with a strip of faded calico. Her eyes, dark, watchful, unreadable, cut across the room and landed on Elias. For a moment, the years fell away. They had known each other once in a place where trust had been a luxury and survival demanded unlikely alliances. But time had pulled them apart. She was half Lakota, half settler, a woman despised by both worlds yet unbroken by either. Elias felt the burn of memory. He remembered her voice calling him back from madness, remembered the brush of her hand when blood had soaked his shirt years ago. But the present was less merciful. A drunk at the table near Elias staggered up, anger flashing like glass. "Half-breed," the man slurred, pointing toward Tallulah. "Ain't right, her standing in here like she belongs." The room tensed. Men shifted in their seats, some nodding, others sneering. Tallulah did not flinch. She only stared back, calm as stone. The drunk lunged, reaching for her braid. Elias moved before he could think. His hand clamped around the drunk's wrist, twisting it just enough to send the man stumbling. Chairs scraped. The postkeeper muttered a curse. That's when Tallulah acted. She seized the drunk by his collar, lifted him like he weighed no more than a sack of grain, and hurled him into the dust outside. The door slammed behind him. The room went silent. Her eyes flicked to Elias. For the first time in years, they looked at one another without battle between them, only the weight of what had been lost. "You shouldn't have come back," she said. Softly, her voice edged like a blade honed too long. Elias swallowed. "Didn't reckon I'd find you here." 1,000 words hung unspoken between them. Regret, longing, betrayal, forgiveness. None found air. Instead, Elias leaned closer, his voice barely more than a whisper, haunted and tender all at once. "Let me touch you again there." Tallulah's lips parted, but no words followed. The whisper wasn't about flesh. It was about the place deep inside her she had once let him reach. The wound, the loneliness, the fire she had buried beneath silence. Outside, the wind rattled the sign above the post. The sun dipped low, painting the town in crimson light. And in that quiet moment, 2 broken souls stood at the edge of something forbidden, dangerous and undeniable. The town held its breath. Night fell heavy over the frontier town, the kind of night where the stars hid behind dust clouds and the wind carried whispers no man wished to hear. The streets emptied, doors barred, lamps burned low, as if afraid of drawing notice. But in the silence came a new sound, the crack of hooves, the scream of a horse, and then gunfire splitting the dark. Outlaws had come. The first shot blew apart the sign above the trading post. Men in black dusters rode in hard from the east, torches flaring, rifles raised. Their laughter was sharp, cruel, echoing against the wooden fronts of the saloon and post office. Elias McGraw pushed through the doors of the post, revolver already drawn. His chest burned with the old soldier's instinct he had sworn never to follow again. But some vows break when fire spreads. Beside him, Tallulah Greywolf didn't hesitate. She swung her father's cavalry rifle down from her shoulder, and old Springfield with brass fittings polished by years of care. The weight of it in her hands seemed natural, as though the weapon and the woman were forged from the same steel. She sighted the first outlaw as he raised his torch to a wagon. The crack of her shot shattered the night, and the man tumbled backward into the dust, torch dying beside him. The street erupted. Bullets tore into walls, windows shattered. Horses screamed. Elias fired steady, his revolver bucking against his hand. He moved with the precision of a man who had lived too long in the company of violence, each shot deliberate, each breath controlled. But even as his rounds found their marks, his mind whispered the same torment it always had. How many more souls must I send to the earth? Tallulah fought differently. She ducked and rolled, slipping between shadows, loading fast and firing true. She had learned to fight not as soldier nor outlaw but as survivor, every motion efficient, every glance aware of cover and escape. "Behind you," Elias shouted. An outlaw came up on her flank, knife glinting. She spun, rifle barrel slamming, across his jaw before the blade could fall. Blood spattered the dust. She didn't falter. The two of them carved a path through the chaos. Two lives once split by war, now thrown together by fire and gunpowder. But as the fight raged, Elias saw something he hadn't before. Tallulah wasn't just fighting the outlaws. She was fighting to silence voices that had haunted her longer than any raid. A hiss cut through the night, half-breed. It wasn't the first time he'd heard the word thrown at her, but hearing it shouted now in the middle of violence, he saw the way her jaw tightened. She fought harder, faster, with the rage of a woman who had been denied belonging in every world she touched. When the outlaws finally broke and scattered, the silence that followed was worse than the gunfire. The dead lay twisted in the dust. A fire smoldered in the corner of the livery. Elias turned to her. "You all right?" Tallulah's hands shook as she reloaded. Her eyes flashed with something deeper than battle. "They'll never stop," she said flatly. "The whites call me traitor. My mother's people call me abomination. Doesn't matter how many I put down. Both sides will keep hunting me." Her words struck him harder than any bullet could. For a moment, Elias wanted to answer, to say she wasn't alone, that her strength mattered, that she wasn't the thing they called her. But the words caught in his throat, tangled in the web of his own sins. He had no right to speak of absolution when he himself carried ghosts of men he'd killed under the army's banner. Before he could speak, a shadow moved in the alley. Another, outlaw the last, rifle raised. Elias reached first, firing into the dark, the gunshot lighting the hollow of the alley. The man dropped. Elias staggered, his knees buckling. The shot had been too close. For a second, he thought the outlaw had fired back. Tallulah caught him by the arm, steadying him, her strength wrapped around him, solid and undeniable. "You saved me," he muttered. Her dark eyes met his, fierce and unyielding. "No, we saved each other." The words hung heavy between them. Blood soaked the dirt, smoke drifted, and in that fragile stillness after slaughter, they both knew something had shifted. Not trust, not yet, but a bond, raw and undeniable, had been hammered out of blood and fire. Tallulah let go of his arm. "Fate or folly, Elias? That's the question now." The torchlight flickered against her cheekbones, painting her face in gold and shadow. Elias looked at her, the towering woman who had carried both shame and strength across every mile of her life. And for the first time, he wondered if redemption might not come in prayers or silence, but in standing beside her, wherever that path led. The wind carried the smell of smoke toward the hills. The night was far from over. The night swallowed them whole as they fled. Hooves striking sparks against stone, breath steaming in the cool desert air. Behind them, the town smoldered, a red glow against the horizon, voices fading into nothing. Ahead, only wilderness, stretched. canyons carved by ancient rivers, red walls rising like cathedrals of silence. By dawn, their horses carried them into a gorge where the river wound like silver between towering cliffs. The water's voice was constant, rushing and pure, echoing off the canyon walls. They dismounted at the bank, exhaustion and pain pulling at every limb. Elias slid from the saddle, knees nearly giving. His shirt was torn where a bullet had grazed him, the blood stiff against the fabric. He tried to wave Tallulah off, insisting. It was nothing, but she ignored him. She crouched beside the water, filling a strip of cloth. When she pressed the cold rag against his side, he hissed, but she didn't soften. "Don't act like you don't bleed," she murmured. Her hands were steady, calloused but careful. Elias studied her in the pale morning light. The river glowed against her skin, and the braid of her hair clung wet to her shoulder as she bent forward. She was larger than most women he had ever known, taller than many men, her presence commanding even in silence. But here, with her hands tending his wound, he saw more than her strength. He saw the quiet ache of someone who had been forced to hold herself together for too long. "Doesn't matter if I bleed," he said hoarsely. "Matter is how many bled because of me." Tallulah's eyes lifted, sharp and questioning. "War?" He nodded, unable to meet her gaze. "Cavalry. Orders I followed that I shouldn't have. Men, women, children. All the same in the smoke when the bugle sounded. I thought I was serving something noble. Turns out I was just serving the grave." The cloth stilled in her hand. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, with a voice low as the river, she answered, "My mother's people think I betrayed. Them, my father's kin, say I'm dirt. I saved a man once, a soldier, you." Her eyes flicked up at him, and the truth struck. "That's why they hate me," she continued. "Lakota said I turned my back on them for a white man. Settlers said I wasn't white enough to be worth saving. So I walk alone." The words cracked, something inside Elias. His chest tightened as though the canyon itself pressed against his ribs. He wanted to speak, to tell her she wasn't alone anymore, but words had never been his gift. Instead, he reached for her wrist. His hand brushed hers, rough skin meeting rough skin, and the world seemed to narrow to that one point of contact. She froze, breath caught, but did not pull away. For a moment, the roar of the river filled the silence between them. Then she broke it. "You've got no right," she whispered. "No right to think you can touch me again, not after what the world's taken." Elias's voice trembled yet carried weight. "I ain't asking for flesh, Tallulah. Just for you to let me touch the part of you that's still alive, her." Lips parted, eyes flashing with defiance, but he saw the glimmer of pain deep beneath. She pulled her hand back, standing abruptly. "Come," she said. "You'll heal faster if you learn to listen." She led him upstream, where the canyon narrowed and the river bent through reeds and willows. She crouched, pointing at the soil, showing him tracks of a fox, the crushed stems where deer had passed. She moved with the ease of someone raised, between two worlds of knowledge, settler tools and tribal instincts, and though neither had fully claimed her, both lived in her veins. Elias followed clumsily, still stiff from pain. She mocked him once, a rare laugh escaping her lips. It startled them both. "You laugh," he said quietly, as if afraid to break it. "Not often. Sounds good on you." Her eyes lingered on him then, softer, though she shook her head as if to scatter the moment. By nightfall they built a small fire by the river's edge. Smoke rose into the stars, their horses resting nearby, the canyon walls cradling them like the ribs of some ancient beast. Elias sat close, staring into the flames. His voice was heavy with regret. "I don't deserve peace, Tallulah. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces." She turned to him, the firelight flickering in her eyes. "You think I don't carry ghosts? Every time I walk into a town, they see my skin and spit. Every time I look at my people, they see my father's blood and turn away. Ghosts walk with me too, Elias. But I don't let them decide where I go." Her words struck deep. She wasn't just surviving, she was defying. Silence stretched, the fire crackling, the river murmuring in the dark. Slowly, almost against his own will, Elias reached again, his hand hovering near hers. This time, she didn't pull back. The warmth of her skin, the steadiness of her presence, spread through him like a balm he hadn't known he needed. His whisper came the same as years ago, though now it was softer, rawer. "Let me touch you again there." Tallulah's eyes glistened, and for the first time she nodded, barely but enough. He drew her into his arms, not as conqueror or savior, but as a man broken, asking to be mended. She let him, her head resting against his chest, listening to the heartbeat of someone as lost as she was. Above them, the stars stretched endless, the river's song carrying into the night. Two outcasts, leaning into each other, daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, trust could be reborn in the silence between gunfire and dawn. The night closed over the canyon like a clenched fist. The river, once their refuge, now murmured as if warning them. Hooves thundered suddenly from the ridges above, too many to count, the rhythm like war drums against the stone. Before Elias could draw steel, shadows slid down the slopes. Riders painted in war paint, feathers catching firelight, rifles raised. Lakota warriors encircled them, their faces hard, their silence heavier than the weapons they carried. Tallulah stiffened. Elias felt her body shift, not with fear, but with recognition. At the head of the riders came a man taller even than Elias, his shoulders broad beneath a buffalo hide coat. His braids were tied with red cloth, his gaze sharp as flint. He dismounted slowly, eyes never leaving Tallulah. "Grey Wolf," he said in Lakota, the name falling like a stone. "Sister." Elias's breath caught. He had never seen her face. Like this, carved in pain, shadowed with memory. "Wikasa," she whispered, her half-brother. The war party bound Elias's hands with rawhide, forcing him to his knees. He didn't resist. He had learned long ago the futility of pride in the face of inevitability. Wikasa circled Tallulah like a wolf, his voice low and sharp. "We thought you dead, but no. Here you stand, dragging a white man beside you. Again." Elias's head snapped up. The word again struck deep. Tallulah's eyes flickered toward him, then back to her brother. "I made my choice once. I'll make it again," the warriors muttered. The canyon's air thickened, charged with old blood and betrayal. Wikasa raised, his hand for silence, his eyes narrowed. "Then speak it plain, sister. Prove your loyalty to blood, renounce him. Leave him to us, and perhaps you will walk free. Refuse, and you die beside him." The fire crackled between them, shadows stretching long. Tallulah's jaw tightened. The silence that followed felt endless, broken only by the river whispering of old wounds. Finally, she stepped forward. Her voice carried, steady, though sorrow pressed against every word. "You know why both sides despise me? Because years ago, I betrayed them all. I betrayed my own kin to save this man." Gasps broke from the riders. Elias felt the words strike him like a bullet. His chest clenched. Memory surged, a skirmish, blood-soaked earth, a Lakota camp burning. He remembered a figure in the smoke pulling him from death's door, guiding him past spears and gunfire. He had never known the price of that mercy until now. Tallulah's voice shook but did not falter. "They call me half-breed, abomination, traitor. They're right. I betrayed blood for him. Not because I loved him then, but because I saw in him something the war hadn't yet killed. Something I refused to let the earth swallow." Wikasa's face twisted in fury and grief. "And for that you damned yourself, you damned us all." The warriors pressed in closer, rifles cocked. Elias struggled against the bindings, voice raw. "Take me. Let her live. She doesn't deserve your hate. She was only trying to—" Tallulah cut him off with a glance, fierce and unyielding. "Don't you dare," she said. Elias's heart thrashed against his ribs. "You shouldn't die, for me." "And you shouldn't die instead of me," she shot back. "This is mine to carry, not yours." The fire between them painted their faces in gold and shadow. Two souls, trapped between worlds, bound by a choice made years ago that either could escape. Wikasa stepped closer, his hand gripping the haft of his war club. His voice trembled with rage. "Blood or death, sister, choose." Tallulah's chest rose, slow and defiant. She turned her gaze from her brother to Elias, the man she had once saved, the man she now stood beside at the edge of ruin. Her eyes softened, just enough to reveal the storm within. "I choose neither," she said quietly. "I will not kill him, and I will not forsake him. If you call that death, then so be it." The camp erupted in shouts, warriors clashing words in their tongue. Some demanded her blood, others warned against spilling kin. Elias's throat burned with guilt. The truth of her suffering, her exile, the weight of her name, and all because of him. He wanted to beg forgiveness, but his voice refused him. Tallulah knelt suddenly beside him, her hand brushing against his bound wrists. For a heartbeat, the world hushed. Her whisper reached him, low, fierce, and breaking. "You were the first man who ever looked at me and didn't see shame. Don't you dare try to die for me now. I'll carry my own choices." Her hand lingered against his skin, and though he couldn't hold her, the touch seared into him. The canyon wind howled. Sparks rose into the night sky. The war drums of silence beat louder. Wikasa stared at his sister, torn between love and hatred, duty and blood. His war club shook in his grip. At last, he spat into the dust, turning away with a growl. "Bind them both," he ordered. "Let the outlaws decide their fate. If she would tie herself to the white man, then let her die with him." The warriors obeyed, dragging Elias and Tallulah toward the waiting horses. The firelight faded behind them. The river's voice followed, soft and sorrowful, carrying the weight of blood, betrayal, and love unspoken. The night sky bled with fire. The canyon was no longer silent. It echoed with the roar of rifles and the crack of revolvers, the sparks of powder igniting against stone. Horses screamed. Men cursed in Lakota and English alike, and through the chaos. Two figures fought like shadows bound together. Elias and Tallulah, back to back, their silhouettes carved against the glow of burning wagons. The war party had dragged them to the outlaw camp before dusk. Hide tents and whiskey crates littered the canyon floor, guarded by half-drunk gunmen with cruel eyes. Firelight licked across painted faces, iron shackles, and stolen cavalry rifles. Tallulah sat bound beside Elias, her chin lifted though her wrists were raw. Across the fire, her half-brother, Kashawa, leaned against a stolen saddle, his gaze unreadable. His men laughed with the outlaws, trading horses and liquor. Two worlds of vengeance bound in uneasy alliance. "You brought me here to humiliate me," she said in Lakota, her voice steady despite the fire's smoke burning her eyes. "No," Kashawa replied coldly. "I brought you here to watch your world burn. Him first, then you." Elias caught her gaze. His mouth was split, blood crusting at the corner, but his eyes still carried that quiet defiance that first drew her near. He leaned slightly toward her. "Don't give him what he wants," Elias whispered. "Don't let hate make you his." The gunfight began not with a shot, but with betrayal. One outlaw grew bold, reaching for Tallulah as if she were spoils. Kashawa's hand snapped to his knife, and in that instant of prideful fury, the alliance splintered. A blade flashed, a gun answered, and the canyon erupted. Elias used the chaos to wrench free. He slammed his chains against the edge of a fire pit, sparks flying. The shackles split, burning his skin, but freedom was worth the pain. Tallulah kicked at an outlaw lunging for her, stealing his revolver in one swift motion. The canyon was fire and thunder now. Bullets ricocheted against stone. Men fell screaming into the flames. Elias dove for a rifle, firing into the smoke, the recoil hammering against his bruised shoulder. Tallulah covered him. Every shot of hers sharp, deliberate, the mark of someone trained not just to survive but to endure. For a moment, it felt as if the two of them were the only ones alive, a soldier and an outcast, moving like instinct, each trusting the other's breath and shadow. Through the storm of gunfire, Kashawa strode forward, tall and terrible in his painted war shirt, his eyes locked not on Elias, but on her. You, he thundered, always between blood and stranger. Choose now. Tallulah raised her revolver, hands trembling. Smoke and ash swirled between them, their faces lit by firelight, so alike in bone and brow, yet worlds apart. I chose long ago, she whispered. When I saved him, I thought I saved myself too, but I was wrong. I lost you. Her shot cracked the night, grazing his shoulder. He staggered but did not fall. Rage twisted his face as he drew his knife and charged. Steel met steel as she caught his wrist, the blade flashing inches from her throat. They grappled in the dirt, her braids torn loose, his breath hot with fury. It was not just a battle of weapons, but of memory. Every shared childhood moment turned bitter. Traitor, he snarled. Daughter, she cried back. Sister, flesh of the same mother. But you would rather see me burn than see me free. The knife carved across her arm, blood hot and bright. She struck him back with all the fury of years buried. The sound of their struggle drowned in the storm of gunfire surrounding them. Elias fought on the canyon's edge, his rifle nearly empty. Smoke choked his lungs, powder burned his eyes, yet he kept firing. Every shot meant not for survival, but for her. A bullet tore across his ribs, spinning him to the ground. He saw Tallulah locked with her brother, saw the firelight halo her face, saw her strength falter under Kashawa's weight. With the last of his will, Elias staggered forward, revolver raised, placing himself between them. The shot came from the dark, not Kashawa's, not hers, but some outlaw unseen in the smoke. It struck Elias in the side, and he collapsed into her arms. Tallulah screamed his name, the world spinning red. He clutched her wrist, breath ragged. Don't let go, he rasped. Let me touch your spirit once more. His eyes fluttered, his chest heaving shallowly. She pressed her forehead to his, not caring who saw, not caring if this was the end. You will not leave me, she swore. Not tonight. Not like this. The flames consumed the camp. Wagons toppled. Barrels of powder ignited in bursts that lit the canyon walls like lightning. Men scattered into the night, both Lakota and outlaw alike, their alliance broken beyond repair. Tallulah rose, dragging Elias against her shoulder. Kashawa staggered from the fire, clutching his bleeding wound, his knife lost. Their eyes met one last time across the chaos. She did not raise her gun. Neither did he. In that silence, they both understood. Whatever bond they once shared was now ash. Step by step, she carried Elias through the smoke, his weight heavy yet hers to bear. Her blood streaked his shirt, his hand weak against her neck, but she kept moving. Each breath burned, each stride a battle. But surrender was not in her nature. At last, the canyon opened to the night sky, the stars vast and indifferent above. She laid him beside the riverbank, its dark waters whispering against the stones, washing the blood from her arms. His face was pale, lips trembling with the fight to stay. She cupped his cheek, voice breaking. You're not allowed to die. Not until you see me free. Not until you know I chose you, not out of pity, not out of shame, but because you are mine, and I am yours. His eyes closed, not in death, but in surrender to her words. He breathed, shallow but there, still with her, still alive. The final flames of the outlaw camp rose behind them, a tower of smoke against the stars. The river ran cold and steady, carrying the ashes of the night away. She sat there holding him, her face streaked with soot and tears, but her spirit unbroken. Her whisper drifted into the night like prayer. I carried you through fire, Elias. I'll carry you through whatever comes after. The wind lifted embers into the dark sky, sparks of orange fading into the eternal black. The first light of dawn spilled across the riverbank, pale gold washing over water that carried the ashes of the night before. The current whispered against the stones, gentle and eternal, as though it had forgotten the screams, the smoke, and the thunder of rifles echoing in the canyon only hours earlier. Tallulah knelt by the river's edge, her hands still raw, streaked with smoke and dried blood. Her breath came slow, steady, but her eyes refused to leave the horizon. She had carried him here through fire and ruin, step by step, never letting his weight fall. Behind her, Elias stirred. His voice was cracked, heavy with pain. "We made it." Tallulah turned. His shirt was torn open, the wound along his ribs dark but clotted. His face was pale, lips dry, yet his gaze found hers with the same stubborn fire that had once made her betray blood for him. "We made it," she whispered, though her voice carried no triumph. The silence between them was not empty. It was heavy, with all they had lost, and with what neither world, not his, not hers, would ever grant them. The prairie towns would never see them as anything but shadows. The Lakota fires would not forgive the stain of divided loyalty. Tallulah knew it. She saw it in the way the wind bent the grass, always moving, never belonging. "We cannot stay," she said finally, almost to herself. "Not in one place. Not in one world. They will come again." Elias nodded faintly, eyes half closed. "Then, we'll move. The land is wide, and it's never asked where a man belongs." She studied him, the stubborn set of his jaw even while broken, the grit beneath his weakness. Somewhere in her chest, something long locked away began to shift. When he tried to sit, pain drove him back down. His hand fell against the earth, trembling. His eyes met hers, weary but burning. "Tallulah," he murmured, his voice hoarse as the river's edge. "Let me touch you again." There. For the first time, his hand did not reach for her body. It lifted slowly, faltering, until it rested open against her chest, above the heart she had guarded like a fortress her whole life. Tallulah froze. Wind pressed against her hair, the river whispering at her back. Every instinct screamed to pull away, to protect herself from the wound, deeper than blood or betrayal, but she didn't. Her hand rose, covering his. The beat of her heart pressed into his palm, unflinching, alive. Her breath broke, yet her voice held steady. "You're already there," she whispered. The morning opened around them. The sky burned with soft fire, pinks and golds scattering across the horizon. The river sang on, carrying yesterday into distance. They would not build a home. They would not settle the way others did. Their life would be a trail of dust and campfire smoke, a story written on the edges of maps, where love itself was rebellion. Yet for that single moment by the water, neither the past nor the world beyond mattered. Only the steady rhythm beneath his hand, her heart, her soul, and the silence they shared, no longer a wall but a vow. She looked to the horizon once more, then spoke, her voice carrying like a prayer across the river. "That was my story. If it reached you, tell me what you felt. Don't let silence bury us again. Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me where in the world you're listening from."